And particularly, I welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Pavitra Kaur, who is going to speak on today's theme topic. So first of all, I would like to extend my heartiest greetings to all of you on the occasion of International Day of Immunology. As we know, that day of immunology was first held on April 29, 2005 by the European Federation of Immunological Societies with a goal to strengthen the general public awareness of immunology as a basis for individual health and well-being. Due to its great success, it has been celebrated worldwide since 2007 under the auspices of two major societies, the European Federation of Immunological Societies and International Union of Immunology Societies. I welcome you all on this webinar on the occasion of International Day of Immunology. And I was mentioning the importance of this, that why it is being celebrated, as public must know that what is the meaning of the immunology or vaccination, and to give the bridge between the public and the scientist, definitely the day of immunology is celebrated. Here in Kesivas, International Day of Immunology has been celebrated every year. And this year also we are celebrating it on the digital platform due to the current COVID-19 pandemic. So vaccines are one of the greatest medical achievements of all time. In the early 20th century, many thousands of people died each year from diseases such as measles, diphtheria, and whooping cough, which are now prevented by childhood vaccination. Smallpox used to kill millions, but has been completely eradicated by vaccination. So in some ways, vaccines have become a victim of their own success. Most people now lack first-hand experience of how severe these diseases can be. So the COVID-19 pandemic has reinforced what a powerful tool for public health vaccines really are. Remarkably, in less than a year since the pandemic was declared, scientists have been able to develop a number of highly effective vaccines against SARS-CoV-2 and the virus that causes COVID-19. These vaccines train your immune system to protect you against the virus and are already reducing hospitalizations and death rates. Thanks to these vaccines, we can now start to think about a return to our normal lives again. So I think our participants and our keynote speaker, they are going to explain, or they can discuss about the different types of vaccine which can educate our immune system so that it is able to protect us against infection. Now find out what herd immunity really means and how antibodies and T cells from your immune system can destroy bacteria and viruses. And at the end, I again welcome you, since I have to join another meeting, which is University Court meeting at Jean. So I welcome you all once and again, and particularly I welcome and greet on this occasion to our keynote speaker, Dr. Pavitra Kaur, who is going to speak in today's webinar. So thank you very much and welcome you again. So over to Ralte, please.
Thank you, sir. Right now we'll go ahead with our webinar. And like we mentioned, our keynote speaker is Dr. Pavitra Kaur, and she's an associate professor from Gadwasu, Ludhiana. And to introduce our speaker, I would like to call upon Dr. Vivedi, who is the head of our department, veterinary microbiology, to please come and introduce Madam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ralte. Indeed, it's a matter of proud privilege to our department as well as the college to organize International Day of Immunology. And I welcome our today's speaker, Dr. Pavitra Kaur. She is Associate Professor at Department of Veterinary Microbiology, Gadwasu, Ludhiana. She has more than 15 years of teaching experience in the department, teaching undergraduate, postgraduate, and having a vast experience of research activities. She has supervised 3 master's students. Currently, she is supervising 2 more masters and 1 PhD student. A wonderful teacher, a brilliant research worker. I happen to be her associate. I got a chance to work with her for many years, and really we are delighted to listen to our today's speaker, Dr. Pavitra Kaur. Dr. Pavitra, I welcome you once again from the organizing committee as well as from the family of Khalsa College of Veterinary and Animal Sciences. Dr. Pavitra, please.
Thank you, sir. It is indeed my pleasure to be a speaker for today's occasion. So, Dr. Raldi, is my voice clear?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. So, very good afternoon to all the participants. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, especially Dr. Dwivedi, for giving me the chance to present in front of you about what is the latest, all the world is experiencing about. So, about COVID-19, what are the implications of COVID-19, and what are the vaccines which are available, and how can we, just get rid of this. So I'm just going to share my presentation with you. Okay. So the topic for today's webinar is COVID-19 vaccines and immunity. So as we are all aware that a novel coronavirus designated as severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2, that is SARS-CoV-2, what we call it, it was first detected in December 2019 in Wuhan, China, right? And it was responsible for causing the highly infectious disease, which is referred to as coronavirus disease 19. In short, what we call it as COVID-19. CO for corona and VI for virus, that is coronavirus disease 19. Not slowly, but this virus, it quickly spread worldwide. And now, as we all know, it has become a global pandemic. And as of April, that is the latest, April 19, 2021, more than 140 million cases of COVID-19 caused by SARS coronavirus 2 infection have been reported globally, including more than 3 million deaths as per the NIH. Pandemic outbreaks, caused due to coronavirus in humans have been more prevalent. They have become more prevalent in the form of that the world experienced the pandemic of the 21st century in 2002, 2003, in the form of SARS, again caused by a beta coronavirus with its epicenter in China. And then in 2011, in the form of MERS, again having a beta coronavirus lineage in the Middle East. And only few years after MERS, this COVID-19 caused by SARS coronavirus 2 emerged as an even more devastating pandemic. So vaccination, as we all know, this contributes the most promising path back to the normal life. So in today's talk, we are going to discuss a little bit about the COVID-19 vaccines, the authorized ones, the ones which are used, and so many which are in clinical trials, and how our body, it responds to these vaccines or to the coronaviruses. So today's outline of my talk is, first is we'll talk about a little bit about what is coronavirus. and then a little bit about the disease, how our body responds to when it is invaded by the SARS coronavirus 2. Then I'll move on to the vaccines, which are authorized, which are used for these COVID-19. How our body responds to these different vaccines, what is the role of animals, and in addition to vaccines, what else we can do from our side so as to curtail the spread of the deadly disease. So SARS coronavirus. Now coronavirus is named, because it has got a crown-like appearance. So it belongs to the order Nidovirales, family Coronaviridae, subfamily Coronaviridae, and three genera are there, that is alpha coronavirus, beta coronavirus, and gamma coronavirus. So of course the animal viruses are there in the alpha coronavirus, gamma coronavirus. Like we have the viruses for the pigs, for canines, then for birds, for turkeys, and the main important about which we will be talking about today, that is the SARS coronavirus 2. It belongs to the beta coronavirus genus. So if we look at the structure of the virus, it is approximately 50 to 200 nanometers in diameter, and it has a large single-stranded positive sense RNA genome. The genome of this virus, as you can see from this figure, this is 29.88 kb. It is very large and complex, and it has got approximately 12 open reading frames. And the virions, they are enveloped with large club-shaped spikes called peplomers. And it is because of these club-shaped peplomers or the spikes that the virus is known as the coronavirus, that is the crown-shaped appearance, which gives a crown-shaped appearance to the virus. It has got a icosahedral symmetry with a helical nucleocapsid. And like all coronaviruses, it encodes genes for 4 major structural proteins. Specifically, the nucleocapsid protein, or the N, which is associated with the RNA genome. And then it has got 3 membrane proteins, that is the large major spike protein, which is the most important protein for this in regards to this COVID-19. The large spike, that is the S-glycoprotein. Then envelope protein, that is the E protein, and M protein. Now, in case of, in case of SARS, this large spike glycoprotein, this is uncleaved, but it is cleaved in case of SARS coronavirus 2 into, it is cleaved into 2 subunits, that is S1 and S2. So this structure of this SARS coronavirus 2, the spike protein is a major trimeric envelope glycoprotein. And this is expressed on the surface of the virus, and this is the main target, that is the spike protein is the main target for vaccines because it binds to the host cell. It is this protein with which the virus will go and bind to the host cells. So as I told you, the S protein is made up of 2 subunits, S1 and S2. And this governs the membrane fusion, the fusion of the virus to the host cell. This S protein in case of coronaviruses is quite diverse. Because the S protein for SARS coronavirus and MERS, through studies conducted, it has been found out that they share only 44% of the genetic sequence in case of SARS coronavirus and MERS. So this difference is mainly attributed to the S1 subunit, which is composed of the NTD, that is the N-terminal domain, and the RBD, which is known as the receptor binding domain. Now, in case of SARS coronavirus and MERS coronavirus, for SARS coronavirus and for SARS coronavirus 2, dipeptidase 4, this is the receptor for the MERS coronavirus, whereas for SARS coronavirus and SARS coronavirus 2, they have got the same receptor, that is angiotensin converting enzyme 2. So, because they have got the same receptor, SARS coronavirus and coronavirus 2, because they share the same entry receptor, So, these viruses, they were tested with the help of monoclonal antibodies, whether cross-reactivity is there for the SARS coronavirus. And surprisingly, no binding was detected to the SARS coronavirus 2 receptor binding domain, despite the similarity, in the RBD sequences. So, like other RNA viruses, the SARS coronavirus is constantly evolving through random mutation. Now, it has got a proofreading mechanism. It has got a very nice, the thing is there that proofreading mechanism, because of the non-structural protein 14, it is there which is absent in other RNA viruses. We know mutations occur a lot in case of RNA viruses, but no doubt mutation is occurring. Mutation occurs in case of this SARS coronavirus 2, but because of the proofreading mechanism, the mutation rate is approximately 10-fold lower than those of other RNA viruses. These viruses, though we say that they still require some mutations as they spread from host to host. And for SARS-CoV-2, the epidemiologists, they estimate a mutation rate of 33 genomic mutations per year. And any new mutation, as we know, it can potentially increase or decrease the infectiousness and virulence of the virus. So, mutations, they can increase the viral ability to evade the adaptive immune response. That adaptive immune response could be from the past SARS coronavirus 2 infection, or that adaptive immune response could be because of vaccination. And there is increasing evidence that some SARS coronavirus 2 variants, they have reduced susceptibility. So studies, they have been conducted, and work has been done. And it has been found that they have reduced, these variants, they have reduced susceptibility to plasma from people who were previously infected or, vaccinated against COVID-19. And according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, there are few, variants of concern which have been identified. Now, why I say the word variants of concern? They are of concern because there is evidence of an increase in transmissibility of these variants in comparison to the CoV-2. There is evidence that they are responsible for causing more severe disease, that is increased in the terms of increased hospitalization or increased deaths, and a significant reduction in neutralization by antibodies which are generated by infection or by vaccination, or in terms of reduced effectiveness of treatment or vaccines, or it could be in terms of diagnostic detection failures. So that is why they are known as variants of concern. B117 lineage variant, this variant was first detected in UK and originally identified in the USA. And then another variant was there, that is B1351. This variant was first identified in the US at the end of January 2021 and was initially detected in South Africa in December 2020. P1 was first detected in US in Jan 2021 and was initially identified in travelers from Brazil who were tested during routine screening at an airport in in Japan in early January. B1 427 and 429, these two variants, they were first identified in California and were classified as VOCs in variants of concern in March 2021. Now here, I would like to add that as you might be aware that a variant, that is B1617, initially detected in India, in late last year by a scientist. It is known as a double mutant, that is B1617. It is also a double mutant and new surge in India. It is feared to be due to this new variant, that is B1617, in addition to the variant of United Kingdom. And as I told you, this is a double mutant variant, and World Health Organization, it acknowledged based on the preliminary modeling studies that B1617, it has got higher growth rate than other circulating variants in India, suggesting potential increased transmissibility. No doubt other variants circulating, they were also showing increased transmissibility. And the concern is that the combination may be playing a role in the current resurgence in the country. And it is a double mutant in terms of that two mutations, that is E484Q and L452R. These mutations were seen at the 484th position and at the 452nd position of the original virus. And both mutations, they are known to decrease, as I told you, although not completely eliminate the binding of antibodies created by infection and vaccination. And this variant, which is identified in India, has been detected in at least 10 or maybe more than 10 other countries, including US, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. So if we look at this slide depicts the genome of SARS coronavirus 2. So like other coronaviruses, it has got two overlapping open reading frames which code from the 5' end. Starting from the 5' end, it codes for the non-structural proteins which help in viral replication. And from 3' end, there is nested set of mRNAs. And that is why, not nidovirales, nested set of mRNAs which code for various structural proteins, that is N, S, E, all these structural proteins. Virus attaches to the host cell via this spike protein, and as I told you, because it possesses the nested set of mRNAs, that is, it is in the order nidovirales. Now, this was all about, in brief, about the SARS coronavirus. Now, coming to the host immune response. Now, as we all know, when viruses, they enter into the body, when a person is infected by a virus, first of all, the virus will invade the cell of the host in order to survive and replicate. So, once the virus is inside the cells of the the host cell, we all know that the immune cells, they keep on circulating for the body. Because the virus is inside the cell, it cannot see the virus. And so, the immune cells, they don't know that the host cell is infected. Now, in order to overcome this, we know that the cells, they will display this the viral particles, the viral proteins in the form of small fragments on the surface in association with the MHC1. And if the cell is infected by a virus, then these pieces of peptides, they will include fragments of proteins which are made by the virus. So when the cytotoxic T cells, when it circulates in the body looking for infections, and when the cytotoxic T cells, it encounters such type of cells, with the help of T cell receptors, it detects a peptide from a virus. Then what happens? It releases the cytotoxic factors to kill the infected cells. Now, viruses, they are highly adaptable. So, obviously, they have developed ways to avoid detection by T cells. Some viruses, they stop the MHC molecules from getting to the cell surface. So, in those cases, the natural killer cells will come into play. So, when they will find cells which are displaying fewer than normal MHC molecules, they will release toxic substances which will kill the virally infected cells. That could be in the form of perforins, granzymes, granules are there. Another mechanism is, it could be through the interferons. That is, interferons, they are virally infected cells. They produce and release small proteins called interferons, which play a role in immune protection against the viruses. So they can directly interfere with the replication of the virus in the infected cell, or they can also act as signaling molecules. That is, they warn the nearby cells of a viral presence. And because of this, this makes the neighboring cells, the number of MHC molecules, class 1 MHC molecules, will increase on the surface of the neighboring cells, and hence the T cell surveying, they will identify and eliminate the viral infection. And third mechanism, as we all know, it could be through the antibody. Now, in case of SARS coronavirus 2, this was just in general about, I told you what happens when our body is invaded by any virus. So what SARS coronavirus 2 does is it manipulates the host immune response. This is a dichotomous type of response. Dichotomous, that is, virus-mediated pricking is there. On one hand, the cytokine storm is there, and then on the other hand, we have negatively, the T cell counts, they go down. So it is a dichotomous host immune response, which is a delayed but a hyperactive innate immune response, which is characterized by cytokine storms. And cytokine storm is a usual finding in case of severe COVID-19 patients. And this cytokine storm, consequently, it can lead to dampening of T cell mediated antiviral functions. So, increased levels of cytokines, including tumor necrosis factor alpha, IL-6, IL-8, IL-10, the levels were increased and they were negatively correlated to T cell counts in severe COVID-19 patients. And the study was carried out in 2020 by Lucas et al. Markers of T cell exhaustion like TIM3 and cell death like PD-1 were also reported to be elevated in severe COVID-19 patients. And dampening of the host's interferon-1 mediated innate immune response, as I told you, due to open reading frame 3b. This also occurs. And just in addition to having an effect on the T cell number of T cells in the body, this also hampers the antibody production. That is the SARS coronavirus 2 mediated atrophy and lesion of the human lymphoid tissues. Like spleen and lymph nodes, it occurs, thus hampering the antibody production. So, though T cell suppression is not unusual in respiratory viral infections, including SARS and MERS, but high levels of these cytokines, it might be an additional factor which is involved in the causation of T cell suppression. And other factors, they can also be responsible. Other factors like multiple structural and non-structural specificities of SARS coronavirus 2, like furin, a unique furin cleavage site, papain-like proteases. These papain-like proteases, they destroy the host post-translational proteins. Open reading frame 3b, as I mentioned just now, and non-structural proteins, or dynamic conformational changes can occur in the structure of spike protein during host cell fusion. When the virus fuses with the host cell, the structural changes, the conformational changes in the spike protein during host cell fusion, all these things, they give it an edge in infectivity and virulence, over the previous pandemics which have been caused by the coronavirus. It could be SARS or MERS. So, and in addition to the other factors which I listed just now, one of the factors could be, as reported in the latest article in 2021, that is SARS coronavirus 2, it can recruit a heme metabolite to evade antibody immunity. So these are all the mechanisms by which the virus, it can try to evade the immunity, and, it can progress in the body. Now coming to the disease, COVID-19. So COVID-19 is the name of the disease which is caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2. The first case of COVID-19 was reported from China, Wuhan, in December 2019. Incubation period varies from 7 to 14 days. Symptoms of the disease is variable, ranging from fever, cough, headache, difficulty in breathing, loss of smell and taste. 81% of the people develop mild to moderate symptoms, whereas approximately 14% develop severe symptoms like dyspnea, hypoxia, and lung damage. About 5% suffer from critical symptoms like respiratory failure, shock, or multi-organ failure. And older and comorbid people with comorbidities, they are at a higher risk. Transmission can occur through droplets in the form of It could spread through cough, sneeze, aerosols, breathing, contaminated surface, etc. Appropriate diagnostic methods are RT-PCR and antibody testing. And severe COVID-19 involving the acute respiratory distress syndrome, multi-organ failure, death. These are the threats. These are the the most serious threats which can be encountered from the infection. But long-term sequelae from mild disease, it has also been reported. So the high transmissibility, the fact that there could be asymptomatic carriers, plus, in addition to the emergence of the new variants, the variants of concern which we discussed, all these things, they could have, a prolonged effect on the population for the, the time to come. So vaccination, it constitutes the most promising path back to normal life. And we are assuming that this vaccination, it can lead to herd immunity. So coming to vaccination.
So this
Yes, Dr. Rennie, somebody was, you want to say something?
Continue. You can continue.
Okay. So the word vaccine is derived from the Latin word vacca, which means cow, with special reference to cowpox virus. It was used for the first time by Edward Jenner, and vaccine consists of live attenuated or killed pathogens or their nucleic acids or proteins and polysaccharides to induce immune response, in order to protect them from the disease-causing pathogen or a full-blown version of that illness. So vaccine, basically, it is a product that produces immunity from a disease, and it could be given into the body in the form of needle injections or through mouth or through aerosols. The effectiveness. So whenever we talk of vaccines, so because we know vaccines, according to the World Health Organization, the vaccines are very safe, effective, and severe side effects, they are rare. And because of the effectiveness and the life-saving nature of the vaccines, so whenever there is a pandemic or whenever we encounter a pandemic, it could be a public health crisis in the form of Ebola or in the form of SARS or in the form of MERS. So it always, whenever there is a public health crisis, it always leads to people asking one question: when will the vaccine be available? So the answer to this question is a bit complicated because, different types of professionals, they are needed at each stage of development. Different professionals, they are to be considered at each and every stage of the development of the vaccine. And according to CDC, there are 6 stages of vaccine development. So now this COVID vaccine, it was, the process was completed, it was fast-tracked, it was completed in a very short duration of time. The first phase of vaccine development, in general, if we talk about the stages of the vaccine development, the first stage is the exploratory stage. Now, in this exploratory stage, there is basic lab bench work which is involved, computational modeling, by the help of computational modeling, natural or synthetic antigens which could be used as vaccine candidates, they are identified. And then once the exploratory stage is done, once the synthetic antigens, they are identified, then we move on to the preclinical stage. In the preclinical studies, cell culture or tissue culture systems, they are used. Trials on animal models, they are conducted out just to check the safety of the vaccine candidate. How much it is safe, what is the immunogenicity, or and once the safety and the efficacy or the immunogenicity, it has been carried out on animals, then the progress is made to human trials. That is the clinical development, right? And in the clinical development, we have 3 phases, that is phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So phase 1, this is the safety phase because few people, they are tested. So in few people, the vaccine is administered to humans. they are healthy and immunocompetent humans in which the vaccine is given. And here again, the vaccine is tested for safety, appropriate dose, and to check for immune response. And then we move on to the, once it is cleared in the phase 1, then it is moved on to the phase 2. That is a little bit expanded safety phase, in which the vaccine is given to hundreds of people, split into different groups, right? Different groups can be made in the form of elderly versus young and so on. And again, safety, appropriate dose, how much should be the interval between the doses, what is the immune response that is produced, all these things they are looked into. And it is here where it is decided that this vaccine is safe, immunogenic, and also, in this phase, we determine the dose. How much is the dose which is to be given to the phase 3 candidates? And it is this phase 3 where the efficacy of the vaccine is determined. So phase 3 is a large-scale trial where the vaccine is given to thousands of people to evaluate the efficacy. So once the human trials, they are completed, that is the clinical development period is over and the safety efficacy has been determined, then the vaccine will move for the review and the approval by the regulatory bodies like the FDA of the USA or the European Medicines Agency, the European Union, and so on. So once it is reviewed, it is approved, and then the vaccine is marketed for public use and monitored for general effectiveness within the population. Now these are two diagrams, two flow charts. Now this flow chart shows the traditional process of vaccine development. So in this flow chart, as you can see, in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, separate trials are conducted out. And normally this takes around 10 to 15 years. But whenever there is a pandemic, as in case of COVID-19, this is fast-tracked to 12 to 24 months. So in this case, the phase 1, what we can do is we can combine the phase 1 and phase 2 together. And then all these phases, they could be fast-tracked so that the vaccine is made available to the public in a very short duration of time. Now coming to the types of vaccines. If we coming to the, the COVID-19 vaccines, there are various platforms being looked at for the development of COVID-19 vaccines. So it could be RNA vaccines, DNA vaccines, non-replicating viral vectors, inactivated virus vaccines. Now, RNA and DNA based vaccines, they have not been developed and licensed for human use in the past. Now, in this case, so in the RNA vaccines, the adenovirus vector vaccines, subunit vaccines, and inactivated vaccines, the vaccines, they have been authorized and they are put to public use, whereas there are many others which are still going on in the clinical trials, like VLPs, DNA plasmid vaccines, lentivirus vaccines, conjugate vaccines. All these vaccines, they are still in the clinical trial phase. Now coming to the RNA vaccines. So this is RNA-based vaccine, and the RNA-based platform, the vaccines based on RNA of the viruses, it provides an advantage in in a pandemic situation. What is the advantage is that the RNA-based vaccines, they do not require the bioreactor culture techniques, so it can be made more rapidly in the lab. It is based upon the genetic sequence of the virus. And this allows the development process to be fast-tracked in the event of a pandemic. And a robust immune response can be produced. So delivery of mRNA is achieved with the aid of lipid nanoparticles, which protect the RNA strands and help their absorption into the cell. Now RNA, as we all know, RNA is it is a very unstable molecule. And in this case, the mRNA is chemically synthesized in a laboratory. So the mRNA, it is encapsulated, as you can see over here, the mRNA is encapsulated in lipid nanoparticles. So the encapsulating the mRNA in lipid nanoparticles is one way to ensure that a vaccine can successfully enter into the cells, deliver the mRNA into the cytoplasm. And mRNA does not linger on in our cells for long. And once it has passed its instructions, to the protein making machinery in our cells, enzymes called RNases, they will degrade the mRNA. So with the aid of lipid nanoparticles, the RNA enters into the cell. The nucleotide modified messenger RNA is used for this purpose. It acts as messenger RNA inside the tissues, and this mRNA is translated into foreign proteins. And this is capable of stimulating an adaptive immune response. So here we can see the mRNA, it enters into the cellular uptake is there, translation proteins are formed, and with the help of the MHC, the peptides, they are brought to the surface, or it could be extracellular secretion, and immune responses are generated. So we have two vaccines in this. So one is the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, and second is the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. These are two mRNA vaccines which have been authorized for use. So Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, it is mRNA based, and German company BioNTech is the developer. This partnered with the American company Pfizer for support with clinical trials, logistics, and manufacturing. And in China, the vaccine is manufactured and distributed by Fosun. The lead candidate in this vaccine is BNT162b2. This is the lead candidate. And it consists of, the current vaccine consists of purified in vitro transcribed single-stranded RNA with modified nucleotides which encodes a mutated form of the spike protein, which is encapsulated in lipids. Now, remember, in case of mRNA molecules or in case of mRNA vaccines, the mRNA, it can serve both as an immunogen and an adjuvant. Why? Because it has got intrinsic immunostimulatory properties. So that is why it can serve as an immunogen as well as an adjuvant. So upon entry into the cells, this single-stranded RNA, we will study about the immune response in the coming slides, but at the moment you should remember that this can act as immunogen as well as adjuvant. So this vaccine is administered in the form of 2 doses, 3 weeks interval given intramuscularly, and clinical trial studies have shown that this has got an efficacy of 95%, with most common side effects of the vaccine being mild to moderate pain at the injection site, fatigue, and headache. Second mRNA vaccine is the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. And here I forgot to tell you about the authorization and eligibility by country. The vaccine is fully authorized in some of the states like Brazil, New Zealand, Saudi Arabia, European Union, and India. In India, it is an eligible COVAX recipient. So this COVAX, this is a COVID-19 vaccine global access facility. COVAX, this is a global collaboration for speeding up the development, manufacture, and equitable distribution of the COVID vaccines. Second mRNA vaccine is the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. Again, this is an mRNA vaccine, 1273. 2 shots are required at an interval of 1 month, 28 days apart. This is 94.1% effective at preventing lab-confirmed COVID-19 illness in people who received 2 doses. Developed by NIAID, the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, and Moderna. Again, nucleotide modified mRNA which encodes for the spike protein as encapsulated in lipid nanoparticles is used. And again, for this, India is an eligible COVAX recipient. Now, this was all about the mRNA vaccines. Coming to the adenovirus vector vaccines. So, adenovirus vector vaccines, they are based on the non-replicating viral vector, that is adenovirus. It consists of non-replicating viral vector adenovirus shell containing DNA, which encodes for the SARS coronavirus 2 protein. Adenovirus vectors, they have got advantage. That is why they are used, because they've got high transduction efficiency. They have got broad viral tropism, transgene expression. They are capable of infecting both dividing and non-dividing cells. So these are some of the advantages why adenovirus vector vaccines are used. Adenoviruses are used as vectors. But the only thing of concern is, the only thing which can pose an issue for this vaccine is in case of people that might have pre-existing immunity to adenoviruses due to previous exposure. So authorized vaccines of this, under this category, that is the adenovirus vector vaccines, we have Oxford's AstraZeneca COVID-19, Sputnik 5 of Russia, Convidacia Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. So in Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, it uses the modified, that is the genetically altered chimpanzee adenovirus. Genetically altered, so it can't replicate, it can't cause adenovirus infections in people who have had the vaccine. And so this vector, what it will do is, it will deliver the gene which encodes for the SARS coronavirus 2 spike protein to the cells. And then the cells will transcribe this into mRNA, which in turn prompts our cellular machinery to make spike protein in main body or cytoplasm of the cells. And then cells will present it on the surface, prompting our immune system to make antibodies or the T-cell responses. Then Sputnik 5, it uses human adenovirus serotype 26 for the first shot and serotype 5 for the second. Though much is not published about Sputnik 5. So a little bit, Then next is Johnson & Johnson vaccine. It uses serotype 26 and Convidacia uses serotype 5. So coming to the first category of the adenovirus vector, we have the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. Now, because of this name itself, it is named as AZD1222. It is sold under the brand names of Covishield and Vaxzevria. Covishield, all of us are very much familiar with Covishield because this is the vaccine which is being currently used in India for vaccination against COVID-19. The medicine is administered intramuscularly by 2.5 ml doses, 4 to 12 weeks apart. Clinical trial studies have shown that the efficacy of the vaccine is 76% at preventing symptomatic COVID-19, beginning at 22 days following the first dose and 81.3% after the second dose. Of course, there are side effects which include mild pain at the site of the injection, headache, nausea, fever, etc. But it has been found that the vaccine is quite safe. And next we come to the next vaccine under the adenovirus vector vaccine, that is the Sputnik 5 COVID-19 vaccine. This vaccine is developed by the Gamaleya Research Institute of Epidemiology and Microbiology, and it was registered by the Russian Ministry of Health as GAM-COVID-Vac. The efficacy, it has been reported, it is 91%, and again intramuscular administration in 2 doses of 0.5 ml each with interval of 21 days. And again, India, it has been given emergency authorization for this vaccine. Next is Convidacia, that is D5NCOV, trade name is Convidacia. This is a single dose. Earlier, there were 2 doses. This is a single dose viral vector vaccine developed by CanSino Biologics, China. Efficacy, as reported in the trials, it is 65.7% in preventing moderate symptoms of COVID-19 and 91% efficacy in preventing the severe disease. And Convidacia, it is authorized for use in China, Mexico, Hungary, and China. Next is Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. which is developed by Janssen Vaccines in Netherlands and its Belgian parent company, which is subsidiary of the company that is Johnson & Johnson in America. The vaccine, again, this vaccine also requires only one dose. This is the advantage, and it does not need to be stored frozen. And it was 66% effective in a one-dose regime in preventing symptomatic COVID-19, with an 85% efficacy in preventing severe COVID-19 and 100% efficacy in preventing hospitalization or death caused by the disease. Now, this was in brief about the mRNA vaccines or the adenovirus-based vaccines. Now, coming to what is the immune response that is elicited once we are vaccinated with these vaccines? As I told you, both the mRNA and adenovirus vector vaccines, they encode production of the SARS coronavirus 2 spike protein. And as we discussed in the beginning of the presentation, that spike protein is the primary target for neutralizing antibodies. So it has been seen that, as I told you, that this mRNA, it can serve as both immunogen as well as adjuvant, owing to the intrinsic immunostimulatory properties of the RNA. So what happens in this case is, once the single-stranded RNA, it enters into the cell, it is recognized by various endosomal and cytosolic innate sensors. And these cytosolic and endosomal innate sensors, they form an innate part of the critical part of the innate immune response to viruses. So innate immune sensors like the TLR3, TLR7, they bind to single-stranded RNA in the endosome. Whereas in the cytosol, we have, components of the inflammasomes like MDA5, RIG1, NOD2, PKR. All these bind to the single-stranded and double-stranded RNA in the cytosol. And when this happens, it leads to cellular activation. There is production of type 1 interferons and multiple inflammatory mediators. Now, what the current vaccines, they do is, because as I told you, they have got, modified nucleotides. In vitro transcribed single-stranded mRNA is there with modified nucleotides. As I told you, this modified nucleotides are there. Those modified nucleotides, what it does is, it reduces the binding to the TLRs and the immune sensors. So when this binding occurs to the TLRs and the immune sensors, there is limited excessive production of type 1 interferons. And the inhibitory functions of these on the cellular translation. And because the mRNA is, it is within the lipid nanoparticles, the lipid nanoparticle carrier, it further protects the mRNA and it targets the delivery and promotes protein translation. So once it, once in the lymph nodes, then the lipid nanoparticle, it is engulfed by the dendritic cells. It gains entry into the dendritic cells at the injection site or within the lymph nodes. And this leads to production and expression of high levels of S protein. And subsequently, this antigen is presented to the T cells for activation of the adaptive immune response. So the resultant activated dendritic cells will present the antigen and co-stimulatory molecules to the S protein specific naive T cells, which become activated and differentiate into cytotoxic T lymphocytes or helper T cells. Also, the S protein specific T cells, they are activated. T follicular helper T cells, they will help the S protein specific B cells. And because of this T helper cell help, the B cells, they will differentiate into the antibody secreting plasma cells, which will lead to the production of high affinity anti-S protein antibodies. So S protein, then memory cells also, both in case of B cells as well as T cells, they will develop following vaccination to prevent from future infection. And as I told, these vaccines, they've got intrinsic innate adjuvant activity. So they are able to trigger innate sensors like the TLR. So what happens? This is a graphical representation of whatever I explained just now. That is the two vaccine formulations. That is the mRNA vaccine. So here we have the mRNA vaccine and here we have the adenovirus-based vaccine. So these two vaccine formulations, they gain entry into the dendritic cells at the injection site or within the lymph nodes. And when they gain entry into the dendritic cells, there is production of type 1 interferon, cytokines, chemokines. And RNA sensors like for the mRNA vaccines, it is like TLR7 or MDA5. All these, they are triggered by the mRNA vaccines. And in case of adenovirus vaccine, it is the TLR9, which is the major DNA sensor for this vaccine. And the resultant, these dendritic cells, they get activated. And when they get activated, they will present the antigen and the co-stimulatory molecules, that is the type 1 interferon, cytokines, chemokines, to the S protein specific, that is the T cells, the naive T cells. These naive T cells, they can become activated and they will differentiate into the effector cells. And either T cytotoxic cells could be generated or helper T cells could be there. And T follicular helper cells, they help the S protein specific B cells. And when T helper cell help is given to the B cell will differentiate into the plasma cell, that is the antibody secreting cell, promote the production of high affinity anti-S protein antibodies. And following vaccination, so what we can say is that following vaccination, the memory T cells, B T cells, the memory B cells, which are specific for the S protein, they develop and they circulate with high affinity antibodies, which are specific for SARS coronavirus 2. And these together, that is the specific memory T cells and specific memory B cells, they will help prevent subsequent infection with SARS coronavirus 2. Inactivated vaccines. Now this was all about the mRNA vaccines and the adenovirus vector-based vaccines. Now coming to the next vaccines, that is the third category, that is the inactivated virus vaccines. Now before I move on to the inactivated virus vaccines, I would like to say a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages and the side effects. So advantages, whosoever gets an mRNA vaccine, they can gain protection without ever having to risk, the serious consequences of getting sick with COVID-19. Because in this case, in case of mRNA or adenovirus vector vaccines, the live virus is not used. And they do not affect. Now, some of the people, they have a notion that they can affect with our DNA because they are DNA based or mRNA based. They do not affect or interact with our DNA in any ways. Because remember, mRNA, it never enters the nucleus of our cell, which is where our DNA is kept. So there is no chance they can affect or interact with our DNA. And before they are bought into the market, before they are made for public use, they are rigorously evaluated for safety. But the only side effects are, or disadvantage or side effects is, more commonly reported side effects, as I told you, this could be pain at the injection site, tiredness, headache, muscle pain, joint pain, chills, fever, and all these symptoms, they are more observed after the second dose, and typically they can last for several days. So coming to the next category of vaccines, that is the inactivated virus vaccines. So inactivated virus vaccines consist of virus particles that have been grown in culture and then are killed using a method such as heat or formaldehyde. So they can be killed or they can be modified by using heat, radiation, chemicals, formaldehydes. So once they are treated with this heat or formaldehyde, they lose the disease producing capacity. That is, the viruses, they are unable to replicate, but still they are capable of stimulating the immune response. And the advantage is, because they are modified or they are killed because they do not replicate, and there is no chance that they can revert back to virulence because the genetic material has been modified or the viruses have been killed. The only disadvantage is that booster doses are required. Otherwise, they are very good vaccines, except for the fact that a booster dose is required for the inactivated virus vaccines. So the authorized vaccines under this group are CoronaVac, BBIBP, WIBP, Corvi, Covaxin, which is very much used in India currently, and Covivac. So coming to one by one, now before I discuss the individual vaccines, I would say that all these inactivated vaccines contain aluminium hydroxide as an adjuvant. And in case of CoronaVac, this is developed by the Chinese company Sinovac Biotech. And from the clinical trial studies, it was found to be 67% effective against symptoms, reduced hospitalizations by 85%, intensive care visits by 89%, and deaths by 80%. And again, India is an eligible COVAX recipient in this group. Next is the BBIBP Corvi, also known as the Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccine. It is developed by Sinopharm and it has got a 79% efficacy. Covaxin, the vaccine which is very much used in India currently, along with Covishield. So BBV152, also known as Covaxin. This is an inactivated virus-based vaccine being developed by Bharat Biotech in collaboration with the ICMR. In the trial results, Bharat Biotech and ICMR said that Covaxin demonstrates an overall interim clinical efficacy of 78%. The efficacy against severe COVID-19 disease was 100%, and the vaccine is developed by using the whole virion inactivated virocell-derived platform technology. And this Covaxin, it has got an additional adjuvant called a TLR7A, against which a strong immune response is prompted, long-lasting immune response. And of course, all these COVID-19, this is Covaxin also, they require administration in 2 separate doses. And the advantage of Covaxin, yesterday itself and today it came in the newspaper that according to Dr. Anthony Fauci he's a medical advisor to the White House, he said that the Covaxin, it is found to be effective against the double mutant, the very mutant of concern, which I mentioned when we were discussing about the mutants of concern in case of coronaviruses. So yesterday only the news was there that this Covaxin, which is a good news, that Covaxin is it was found to be effective against the double mutants, which people say, or which reports suggest that it could be responsible for the second surge, the second wave of the disease in the country. The advantage is it is a vaccine with no sub-zero storage, no reconstitution is required. That is, it is a ready-to-use liquid presentation in multi-dose vials, and the vaccine is stable at 2 to 8 degrees. And again, it is a 2-dose, as I mentioned just now, that 2 doses are to be given 28 days apart. Now, coming to the immune response to inactivated vaccines. Now, because these are inactivated, they can't revert back, they can't replicate. So unlike the live antigens, the inactivated antigens, they are not affected by the circulating antibodies. So requires multiple dosing. As first dose, it only primes the immune system, but it does not provide protective immunity. And again, the immunity primarily that is antibody based, no cellular immunity. Coming to the subunit vaccines. Now again, here I would like to emphasize that time and again we say antibody mediated immunity or a rapid test, antibody test. Why not the T cell response? Very less work has been done on the T cell response, because it is not easy to test a person's T cell response. Now, the reason is it is not easy to test a person's T cell response, whereas antibody tests, they are relatively straightforward. Now coming to the subunit vaccines, the subunit vaccines consist of one or more purified form of the antigen of the pathogen without introducing the whole pathogen particles. The purified portions are taken and they are injected into the body. The antigens involved are often protein subunits. Protein, as we already know, that it is a very potent immunogen. So protein subunits, they are used, but it can be any molecule that is a fragment of the pathogen. By restricting the immune system to the whole pathogen, the risk of side effects is minimized when we use the subunit vaccines. So two authorized vaccines are Epivac Corona and RBD dimer. Also, we have like Novavax, that is the protein subunit vaccine. So the benefit with using the subunit vaccines is that it is advantageous for those people who have got a compromised immune system. And the challenge is this is relatively complex to manufacture. And adjuvants and booster shots may be required. So first in this case is the Epivac Corona. It is a peptide-based vaccine developed by the Vector Center of Virology. It consists of 3 chemically synthesized peptides, that is viral spike protein, viral nucleocapsid protein, and a bacterial MVP protein. The vaccine is delivered via the intramuscular route, and the adjuvant used is aluminium hydroxide. Next is the RBD dimer, that is ZF 2001. The trade name is RBD dimer. This is an adjuvanted protein subunit COVID-19 vaccine which is developed by the Chinese Academy of Sciences. And again, coming to the immunity to the subunit vaccines. So the recombinant subunit vaccines are efficient in inducing humoral and cell-mediated immunological responses. The risks associated with handling the pathogen are eliminated. However, the disadvantage is that the subunit vaccines, they may be more expensive because it is very difficult to make the subunit vaccines. They may require specific adjuvant to enhance the immune response. Before I come to the precautionary measures, that is, what are the future challenges or what in the future can be done? Now, from whatever I have told you when we studied about the immunity, there we discussed about, just now as I said, antibodies. So the T cell data, it remains to be fully elucidated. So as we all know, the preclinical and early results show that the vaccines, they can generate, neutralizing antibody responses. T cell data, it remains to be fully elucidated. The global pervasiveness of SARS coronavirus 2, along with the presence of the variants of concern, it could potentially limit the vaccine efficacy. So eradication, it can prove challenging. Why it may prove challenging? Because there could be reservoirs within the individuals who are not vaccinated, or there could be reservoirs in other animal species which has not been studied. So new vaccine formulations, they can be generated, and once they are generated, another option is that annual or semi-annual vaccines could be given for the persisting strains or the seasonal variants. The mRNA vaccine formulations which we studied, they containing the mutant S proteins, which could be rapidly synthesized. Whatever mutations we find, the mRNA vaccines, they can incorporate those mutants and they could be rapidly synthesized and included within the lipid nanoparticle carrier. Whereas in case of the vector specific immunity, that could limit the efficacy of repeated boosters. Though the pandemic, this COVID pandemic has accelerated the licensing of promising vaccines, which we are hopeful will fortify our immune systems against the current and future emerging pandemics. But we need this, in addition to all these things, that is the vaccination, we need to keep certain things in mind, which should be a part and parcel, especially during this pandemic period. That is, we should make it a habit to clean our hands often, use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub Or if you don't have, simple washing with water. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing, social distancing, what we call. Wear a mask whenever physical distancing is not possible. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue whenever you cough or sneeze. And stay home if you feel unwell. If you have a fever, cough, and difficulty in breathing, then seek medical attention. And in addition, these are the precautionary measures. Being a veterinarian, I would also like to speak a little bit about COVID and animals. So, as it is not, we say the COVID-19, it originally came from bats. But at present, there is no evidence that animals, they play a significant role in spreading the SARS coronavirus too. So based on evidences, the risk of animals spreading coronavirus to people is low. It requires more studies to draw any solid conclusions. But because the disease is of zoonotic significance, so it is always advisable for COVID-19 patients, the people who are positive, to avoid contact with pets, livestock, wildlife. Because if they are in close contact, there could be a possibility of cross-species transmission. First COVID-19 case in companion animal was reported in a Pomeranian dog from Hong Kong, China in Feb 2020, and in the same year in March 2020 in a cat. But in those cases where dogs and cat, a dog and a cat were found positive, the owners were reported to be positive. So it was not the vice versa. That is, from the animals, the owners didn't get the disease. It was from the owners, the dogs and the cats, they got the disease. Susceptibility of wild to the infection is also high, that is in ferrets, monkeys, and experimental studies have been demonstrated which show that ferrets can transmit infection via air or contact. And pigs or poultry, they are not susceptible to SARS coronavirus 2, and no evidence that livestock, sheep, horses, cows, donkeys, they are susceptible. So these are the references from where I have made my presentation. So thank you very much. Hello, Dr. Rennie.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was such a detailed in vaccines and immunity against COVID-19 disease. We can open the question round if anyone is having a question, about one or two, because we are running out of time. If anyone is having a question, you can unmute yourself or you can type a question in the chat box. I do have a question, so I think I will start.
Yeah.
So I have one question, ma'am.
Yes.
So when we're talking about the immune response against our SARS-CoV-2, the virus, I was just thinking, like we were talking about cytokine storms. So is there any relationship with the presence of cytokine storm and immune evasion by the virus? And especially vaccine, especially when we talk about vaccination. So is there any relationship with cytokine production or inflammation in the body and immune evasion by the virus?
Okay. So Dr. Rennie, just as I told you, in one of the slides I told you, the cytokine storms, they occur. And that is the main mechanism by which the virus is able to evade the immune response. Because those cytokine storms, though not much studies have been carried out, but it was seen that there is an increase in the cytokines, that is the cytokine storms, and that was related to the suppression of the T cell count. The T cell count had decreased. Though not much studies they have been, they have not been carried out.
Yes, there was some research about this, the presence of biliverdin and then bilirubin in the body, and which helps in
yeah, there was.
evasion, I think.
I read a paper. There was an evidence of, it was a very high level study carried out recently only. And in that, they showed that the role of biliverdin and bilirubin in allosteric modification, allosteric hindrance, it was there. So in that, the SARS coronavirus 2, the scientists have shown that the SARS coronavirus 2 spike, it binds biliverdin and bilirubin, which is the tetrapyrrole product of heme metabolism, though, though with a very nanomolar affinity. And though majority of the studies, they have been carried out in the receptor binding domain and the N-terminal domain, the functions remain enigmatic. So it was found that, SARS coronavirus 2 spike NTD, from their studies, they indicated that SARS coronavirus 2 spike entity harbors a dominant epitope, and access to that epitope could be controlled by an allosteric mechanism, which is regulated through recruitment of metabolite.
I think that that can definitely contribute to immune evasion by the virus.
Yes.
Yes, that's true. Okay, I think we don't have any more questions. Thank you so much, ma'am. So right now, yes, we also had organized an event that is e-poster competition, and we have a lot of participants coming from different parts of India, and we have judges. They have, I think, they are ready with the winners. So I would like to call our chairman of the organizing committee, our head of department. Yes. Okay. So before I call sir, ma'am, you can stop your presentation of the. Hello.
Please pardon, say again.
Ma'am, you can stop your presentation.
Okay. You want me to remove my presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just a minute. Just give me a minute.
Okay. So now I will ask sir to announce the winner of our e-poster competition. Sir, please over to you.
Response for the e-poster competition which was held. Time was again extended for the convenience of the participants so that more and more number of participants can participate. And very good number of participants made the e-poster, and the participants from Squash, Kashmir, Gadwasu, Ludhiana, Pragati College, Bangalore, Anand Agriculture University, Anand, Mapsu, Maharashtra, Nagpur, Bihar Animal Science University, Patna, Khalsa College, Amritsar, and many more. So the judgment committee submitted the result to us. I will read out the result. So third prize, there are two winners for the third prize event. It is a bracket prize. So in third prize, there is Khushbu S. Rana. She is from College of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Anand. And the second prize winner is Gurleen Kaur, Khalsa College of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Amritsar. Second prize, again there are two winners. It is a bracket. So the winner for the second prize, one is Ipsita Kaur. She is from Veterinary Microbiology Department, Gadwasu, Ludhiana. And second is Harmohan Veer Kaur. She is from Khalsa College of Veterinary. They are the two second prize winner. And the first prize in e-poster competition, it goes to Koppu Wasabi from Guru Angad Dev Veterinary and Animal Sciences University. So I congratulate all the winners, and I also congratulate all the participants who have submitted their entries. Very nice entries they have been. We saw that. So congratulations and thank you once again.
Thank you, sir. With that, we can conclude our webinar, and to say the concluding remarks and our vote of thanks, I would request Sir again.
So once again, it is my proud privilege to extend my sincere thanks to our today's speaker, Dr. Pavitra Kaur, who has been kind enough to spare her very valuable time to us and to our participants and listeners. Dr. Pavitra Kaur has delivered a wonderful lecture on this COVID vaccination and other precautionary measures. Dr. Pavitra, we are really grateful to you for sparing such a valuable time. I am also thankful to the administration of Khalsa Veterinary Science College, our principal, Dr. P.K. Kapoor, Managing Director, Dr. S.K. Nagpal, and our Director, VCC, Dr. S.S. Sidhu, for their support, for their encouragement, for their motivation. And I am very much thankful to my departmental colleagues, particularly Dr. Ralte and Dr. Vipan, for meticulously organizing this webinar on the day of International Immunology Day. And I am thankful to one and all, to my faculty of Khalsa College of Veterinary and Human Sciences and the students. Thank you, one and all. Thank you so much.